Hey guys, tonight we journey back to a time when nightfall wasn't a mood, it was a survival challenge. Picture yourself in a cramped medieval village, smoke curling out of thatched roofs, mud still caked on your boots, and the sun melting into a bruised purple horizon. Chickens settle in their coops, cows shuffle into wooden barns, and you're just standing there watching the light fade fast. There are no street lights, no buzzing phones, no distant hum of traffic, just a bone-deep silence broken by the occasional bleat or bark. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. Let's see who else is drifting off with you tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pull your scratchy cloak tighter. Twilight doesn't last long here. Within minutes, the path ahead vanishes into shadow, and your neighbors are already indoors, bolting doors and sliding wooden planks across frames that barely qualify as secure. The village is small, maybe 20 homes total, surrounded by forests that people whisper are haunted. You laugh nervously. Probably not haunted, probably. As you step across the threshold of your hut, the smell hits first. Wood smoke, turnips, and whatever the dog dragged in. Inside, a fire sputters in the stone hearth, casting flickering shadows on the rough walls. No glass windows here, just holes stuffed with animal hide and straw, trying to keep the wind out. You glance at the sky through a crack. The stars are waking up. No pollution, no haze, just a black velvet blanket littered with silver dust. It's beautiful in a way, but also a little terrifying, because once the sun is gone, there's no second act, no Netflix, no electric lights to keep the illusion of safety. Just dark, real, unsettling, ink-thick dark. You lower yourself onto the bench beside the fire, trying not to disturb the sleeping dog curled there. In the corner, your family begins their nightly rituals, stacking dry wood, muttering prayers, and prepping whatever passes for a bed. There's no real schedule, no one knows what time it is, not precisely. The church bell rings at dusk and dawn. That's enough. You hear a baby crying in the neighbor's house. A goat bleats in response. Somewhere far off, an owl lets out a low, questioning hoot. Life continues, nervously, softly. Sleep will come, but not yet. Here's the twist you weren't expecting. People in the Middle Ages didn't sleep in one big chunk like we do. Most followed a pattern historians call segmented sleep. You'd fall asleep shortly after sundown, snooze for a few hours, wake up around midnight for an hour or two, then sleep again until dawn. Some would pray, some would eat, and some, well, let's just say, babies weren't born by accident. For now, though, you're in that twilight zone, not quite asleep, not quite alert. You're watching the last glow of the fire fade. No matches, remember. So if it goes out, you're stuck. That ember is your lifeline. You place a log gently onto the coals. The flames protest, then catch. That's better. Even at this hour, danger looms. Fires were a constant threat. One spark could eat through your roof in minutes, so you smother the flame a little, banking it carefully with ash. You've done this so many times, your hands remember the motion even when your brain is tired. There's no such thing as true silence in a medieval night. You hear rats skittering in the walls, the wind creaking through roof beams, and the odd, faraway shriek. Fox, human. You decide not to investigate. Your eyes adjust. Shapes emerge from the dark.
your mother bundled in furs, already asleep, your brother trying to smother a cough, the family cat stalking something invisible near the door. By the way, fun fact, it wasn't uncommon to sleep with livestock in poorer homes, chickens, pigs, maybe even a small cow in the colder months. Their body heat helped warm the room, so if something smells off, it's probably not just the turnip soup. Historians still argue whether this practice was more about warmth or protection from theft. Either way, sharing a room with animals became standard fare, and so you settle in. On the floor lies a mattress made of straw, lumpy and alive with the occasional flea. If you're lucky, your side doesn't slope downhill. You curl up under rough wool blankets, your tunic still clinging to your body. No one sleeps nude in winter, too risky. Outside, the night thickens. The village is quiet, but the woods are not. Wolves are real, so are bears, so are men with knives. You push the thought away. Instead, you listen to your own breath, feel the warmth of the fire fading into your limbs, and drift into the kind of half-sleep that only comes when your day's been made of labor and mud. You don't dream yet.
Your straw mattress creaks beneath you as you shift for the third time in 2 minutes. There's a pebble or something harder poking your lower back, and no amount of adjusting your tunic helps. You sigh softly. No one had ever promised comfort, not in this life, not in this village, and certainly not when it comes to beds. See, beds, as you know them, aren't really a thing yet, at least not for you, not for the average peasant family sleeping together in a one-room house with a roof that leaks and a floor that groans in rain. The idea of a private bed, maybe with a frame and a soft mattress, exists, but it's mostly a noble's luxury. For you, a bed is just a pile of straw or hay, maybe layered over a wooden pallet or some tightly packed dirt if you're fancy. Tonight you're lucky. You have a wooden frame with rope webbing under your straw mattress. It's sagging a bit in the middle, sure, and one of the corners creaks like a goat in distress, but it's better than sleeping on the floor, where the cold climbs straight into your bones like an eager ghost. And the straw? Well, it's not just straw. It's straw mixed with old feathers, maybe a few grass blades, definitely some mystery crumbs, and let's be honest, bugs. It's alive in ways you'd rather not think about. Historians call these early mattresses ticks, stuffed with whatever was at hand and tied together with cloth that might have been burlap or repurposed linen if you were lucky. If you were really unlucky, you might wake up sharing your bedding with lice or fleas, or worse, a neighbor's wandering chicken. You curl up next to your brother, who is already snoring softly. In this part of the world, families sleep together, sometimes side by side, sometimes top to toe, depending on how many people fit under how few blankets. It's a warmth thing, sure, but it's also just practical. One fire, one roof, one sleeping area. Privacy isn't something you even dream about, not unless you're noble or mad. Your parents are in the same room, a few feet away. Maybe they've arranged a curtain of sorts, hanging a tattered wool sheet from the ceiling beams. It offers more of a symbolic boundary than an actual one, but it helps, slightly, not enough to muffle the occasional shuffle or sigh or awkward noise you pretend not to hear. And then there's the bedding itself. You pull your rough woolen blanket up to your chin. It's heavy and scratchy, dyed with something that once resembled green. It smells faintly of wet dog, though you're not sure if that's the blanket or the dog. Likely both. The wealthy, of course, have it better. Historians have described noble beds raised off the floor, encased in carved wooden frames with feather mattresses, sometimes stuffed with down. Velvet curtains would hang from canopy rails, not for show, but to keep out drafts. Warming pans, metal trays filled with coals, were run under the sheets before bed. Nice, right? Too bad you're not invited. In your hut, heat is a luxury that fades fast. The fire crackles low now. You reach out and tug the dog a little closer. No shame in sharing warmth with a shaggy mutt that smells like last week's stew. You scratch an itch on your leg and find another one instantly on your neck. It's constant. The medieval itch. Clothes haven't been washed in weeks, not properly. Baths? Maybe once a season if you're lucky, and if there hasn't been talk of demons in the water lately. Historians still argue whether medieval people really bathed as little as records suggest. Some think personal hygiene was better than we give them credit for. Others believe the stench was as medieval as the architecture. Either way, your bedtime routine looks like this. You remove your shoes, finally, loosen your belt, shake out your tunic for spiders, whisper a short prayer, and crawl into a sleeping position that keeps your toes warm without inviting straw into awkward places. There's no pillow, maybe a bundle of cloth under your head, or maybe your arm. You make do, always. A creak overhead breaks the quiet. The roof shifts slightly in the wind, and a bit of thatch crumbles into your hair. Great, that'll be a project for tomorrow, if the pig doesn't eat the ladder again. You roll onto your side, facing the wall. It's cool to the touch, slightly damp. You close your eyes and try to imagine a world where bedding is fluffy, fresh-smelling, and pest-free. But your imagination is weak and the straw is loud. And yet, there's a kind of comfort in the familiarity. The mattress might be terrible. The blankets might itch. But it's home. It's where you've slept since you were old enough to stop co-sleeping with your mother, who, by the way, still insists on reminding you how many nights you wet the straw as a toddler. Outside, the wind picks up again. You hear it slither through the trees like a story just out of reach. A wolf howls, or maybe it's just the wind pretending to be one. You've stopped checking. You wake up, sort of, to your brother's cold toes pressing into your leg. Again, he shifted sometime during the night and is now sprawled like a sack of flour, hogging most of the blanket. You grunt and nudge him back, but he doesn't move. Great. So now it's you, half covered, and the chill slowly creeping in through every corner of the hut. Like a determined draught with something to prove. The fire's glow is faint, just a few soft embers clinging to life. You think about feeding it, but getting up would mean surrendering whatever residual heat you've trapped under your blanket. You hesitate. Is it worth it? Yes, it is. You rise, teeth chattering, and creep toward the hearth, feet brushing against the cold-packed dirt floor. You grab a piece of dry wood from the pile beside the fireplace, careful not to wake the dog, and gently feed it to the embers. They hiss, flicker, and slowly flare to life. It's a small victory, one tiny orange glow against a kingdom of cold. You sit there a moment, hands outstretched, letting the fire reach into your bones. And as you do, you start adding layers. First, your tunic, then a second tunic. This one heavier and still damp in one sleeve from yesterday's snow. Then your cloak, woven of coarse wool that scratches your neck like a cat with trust issues. You cinch a cloth belt around your waist to keep it all from dragging. No elastic waistbands here. And the best part? The furs. Yes, actual animal skins. The one across your shoulders might be fox, though you're pretty sure it used to be your uncle's. It smells like smoke and sweat, but it's warm. Your family doesn't have many furs. Those are luxury items, but the few you have are cherished. You wear them like armor against the cold. You glance over at your mother, who's still asleep under a heap of mismatched blankets and a pelt that might be rabbit. You're not sure. She once sewed it together from leftover scraps when you were 6. It's held up better than your uncle's knees. You shuffle back toward the sleeping area and wedge yourself onto a free corner of a straw, still cold. So you do what every smart medieval peasant does. You steal someone's heat. You press your back against your brother's, who groans but doesn't wake, and instantly feel the difference. It's like hugging a stove that snores. The two of you have done this since childhood. Sibling warmth, not glamorous but effective, and you're not alone in this. Across medieval Europe, people shared beds, sometimes entire families, sometimes neighbors, even strangers at inns. Body heat was more precious than privacy, and the social boundaries were far looser in a world where survival came first. Did it lead to awkward moments? Oh, absolutely, but no one talked about it, or if they did, they just blamed it on the mead. Historians still argue whether people slept naked under their layers to conserve heat or clothed to trap it in. Some say the skin-to-skin method was more effective. Others argue that keeping your clothes on ensured you wouldn't wake up frozen to your blanket. Either way, nudity wasn't really part of the equation for peasants in the middle of winter, not unless you were either reckless or very, very drunk. And it wasn't just clothes and body heat. Some households kept bricks near the hearth during the day, heating them up to tuck under blankets at night. Others filled cloth bags with grains or sand and laid them by the fire to warm their toes in bed. Imagine a medieval hot water bottle, only lumpy and slightly flammable. Of course, there were the outliers. Nobles had bed curtains, warming pans, and even fur-lined slippers for nighttime bathroom runs. You, however, just have your cloak, your brother, and a faint hope that you don't have to get up again until morning. The cold presses against the walls like a polite but insistent guest. You can almost hear it tapping, waiting for its invitation through the cracks, but the fire is holding strong now. The embers glow a little brighter, and you tug your blanket higher over your face, breathing through a patch that doesn't smell like feet, and then you hear it, the unmistakable sound of your father muttering in his sleep. You can't make out the words, but it's definitely a dream argument, maybe with your neighbor about chicken theft, or maybe with a spirit from the woods. Either way, you roll your eyes. There's a rhythm to the night in this house, snoring, muttering, occasional coughs, the creak of timbers, the drip-drip of something mysterious from the rafters, and through it all, the slow breathing of people wrapped in furs and blankets, sleeping not just out of need, but as an act of quiet defiance against a world that offers very little comfort. You lie there, eyes closed, thinking about all the other peasants in all the other huts, doing exactly what you're doing, wrapped up like burritos in scratchy wool, borrowing heat from each other, silently willing spring to arrive faster. Somewhere between your second and third half-dream, a sound breaks through the fragile blanket of sleep. A low, rumbling groan outside the wall. It could be the wind, could be an animal, could be the neighbor's donkey with indigestion again. But tonight it carries a chill that runs colder than the draft tickling your neck. You pull the blanket up and press closer to your brother, who mutters something about cabbages in his sleep, but your eyes stay open. You're not quite awake, not quite dreaming, drifting in that slippery middle place where every sound feels more important than it probably is. Outside, the night stretches wide and strange. It's not quiet, never is. You start to notice everything, the wooden beams creaking softly like they're whispering to each other, the distant baying of a hound beyond the village, and the fluttery flap of something, maybe wings, maybe just your imagination, passing close to the chimney. Night in medieval Europe wasn't peaceful. It was alive and a little bit haunted. You're not alone in thinking this. For medieval peasants, the nighttime hours were mysterious, sacred, and often terrifying. The dark wasn't just a lack of sunlight. It was a space where all the unexplainable things came alive. Spirits, demons, goblins. Even the church had to weigh in, reminding people to pray hard before bed, lest your dreams be invaded by the devil himself. You lie still and listen. There's a rustling near the roof, probably a rat or maybe a marten slipping along the thatch looking for eggs or mischief, but your mind doesn't stop there. It wanders, like every mind does at this hour, into the realm of the maybe. Maybe something is out there. Maybe the stories about the forest aren't just bedtime warnings. Maybe the old woman by the river really can talk to owls. And maybe, just maybe, the wind carries more than leaves. One of your neighbors insists he once heard a baby crying from the woods at night. No one had gone missing, no one had given birth, just the sound of a baby alone in the trees. That was 5 winters ago. He still doesn't walk home after sunset. You shift again, turning onto your back. The ceiling beams loom above you in flickering shadows. The fire's light dances across them, turning the rafters into jagged teeth. You blink slowly, still just wood, still just smoke, but you can't unsee the monster's mouth. This is the part of night where everything creaks louder. The house doesn't feel like a safe space. It feels like a shell, barely holding back whatever's outside. Locked doors, please. Most peasants didn't even have proper locks, just a wooden bar across the door and maybe a heavy pot leaning against it for extra warning. Burglar alarms. Try tripping over a goat in the dark. Historians still argue whether rural villages were really as dangerous as legends suggest. Some say bandit attacks were rare. Others claim they were terrifyingly common, especially during periods of famine, war, or plague. Either way, fear became a normal part of life after sundown. You hear another thump outside. This time it's closer. You strain your ears and hold your breath. Nothing, just the wind again. You laugh softly to yourself, but it sounds too loud in the quiet. You're not really scared, probably. But then you remember the local tale about the woman who walked outside after dark and saw a shadow without a body. Her hair turned white overnight. She now keeps a candle burning all through the night, even when wax is expensive and scarce. There's a science to it, probably. Maybe she had a stroke. Maybe she just slipped and hit her head. But in a world where science hasn't yet won the argument, superstition gets the final say. You lie back down, adjusting your blanket, and try to ignore the prickling at the back of your neck. The fire has dipped again, but not enough to merit getting up. You settle for pulling the dog a little closer and pretending his snore's a protection. It's strange, isn't it? How night amplifies everything. Sounds, fears, thoughts. You think about the people you know who didn't make it to this winter. The boy who drowned in the well, the girl who caught fever, the merchant who vanished on the road. They're all gone now. No graves, just stories. That's how memory works here, passed around like bread, not written down, but whispered in dark corners, shared while the fire burns low and the night howls a little louder than usual. You realize you've been holding your breath. You exhale slowly, trying to ground yourself. The fire's glow dances across the stone wall, and the shapes begin to calm down again. Just smoke, just shadows, nothing more. Your brother mumbles something and rolls away from you, taking half the blanket with him. Again, you yank it back without ceremony. The dog grumbles and shifts to a warmer spot by the hearth. Everyone, it seems, has their coping method. You close your eyes once more and let the sounds blend together, the crackling of embers, the wind slippy. You awaken again, though maybe Awaken is too generous a word. It's more like you surface, groggy and reluctant, from the shallow pool of medieval sleep, jolted by a sudden gust of icy air brushing against your face like a damp feather. Your blanket has slipped, and that's never a good sign. Cold is patient here. It sneaks in through gaps and holes you didn't know existed, curling around your limbs like a cat with claws. And it's not just the cold that keeps people alert. It's the ever-present sense that something could go wrong at any moment, something simple, something dangerous, like the wind knocking loose a shutter, or a cinder popping from the hearth and landing on dry straw. You sit up, rubbing your face with calloused hands. The hearth's glow is down to a whimper, just the faintest ember glow beneath a veil of ash. You curse softly under your breath, not too loudly. You don't want to wake the others, but the truth is, if that ember dies, you'll be starting the fire from scratch in the morning, and that's no small task. You shuffle over to the fire again, adding a small stick, then another. You blow gently, coaxing the embers back to life like a nervous parent waking a moody child. The flames hiccup, then stretch, alive again. You warm your hands, sighing into the flickering heat, and then it hits you, the sound, a slow creaking, not from the rafters, not from your brother's dream fidgeting. No, this is from the door. Your spine stiffens. You wait, another creak, but it's not the door opening. It's the wind pressing against it, testing it. The latch groans slightly, holding firm. You stand up and walk over, gently pressing your weight against the plank that bars the entrance. It holds, just as you knew it would, but still you double-check the cloth stuffed into the cracks by the hinges. In winter, it's not just about privacy, it's about survival. Any crack, no matter how small, is an invitation to the cold, or worse, mice, insects, damp, or, on especially dramatic nights, the devil himself, as your grandmother used to whisper, half joking. The locks you rely on, primitive at best. Most peasant homes didn't have keys. They had pegs, bars, and wooden wedges, ingenious in their simplicity, yet laughably ineffective against someone determined. You recall stories of thieves who could undo a latch with a stick or even a goat's horn. A skilled robber didn't even need to enter through the door. He could come through the thatch like a hungry raccoon with ambition, which is why many medieval families slept in shifts. Yes, rotating sleep wasn't just a biological phenomenon due to segmented rest cycles. It was a security strategy. One person stayed alert, sometimes a parent, sometimes the oldest child, to guard the flame and the door, and to listen. You press your ear to the wood. Outside, the wind wheezes through the trees. Maybe a branch snaps somewhere far off. You can't see anything through the tiny peephole your father carved last spring. Just darkness, solid and endless. But you feel the forest watching, or maybe that's your imagination. Medieval minds are creative, sometimes too creative. You step away from the door and pull your cloak tighter. Back inside, everything still. The fire flickers gently now, embers breathing their orange rhythm. You glance toward the window. Well, not a window exactly, just a square hole in the wall covered with a goat hide flap. A breeze pushes against it from outside, and you instinctively push a clay bowl against the bottom to keep it from lifting. You've patched that window hole 3 times already this winter, first with straw, then with rags, and once, in desperation, with mashed sheep dung. It worked, but the smell, lingered. Historians still debate whether medieval homes were this poorly insulated across the board. Some claim better houses used daub and wattle, a mixture of mud, straw, and sticks to keep the elements at bay. Others argue that most peasant huts were so porous that sleeping indoors only made sense because it was marginally better than dying outside. You glance toward your mother, who's snoring softly. Her feet are nestled against a clay pot filled with warm ashes, a poor man's bed warmer. You might borrow that idea tomorrow night. And then there's the ceiling. You look up, eyes adjusting to the dark that pulses between rafters. The thatch is sagging in places, a patchwork of reeds tied with rope, reinforced with animal dung and the occasional miracle. You once found a bird nesting up there in spring. Your father called it free rent, and no one bothered to remove it. The bird stayed for a week, then left. You envied her freedom. Still, the roof leaks. When it rains, you know exactly where to place the pots. You've memorized the drip rhythm, like your home has its own music. Tonight, though, there's no rain, just frost forming on the inside of the walls. You run your fingers across the stone, cold, damp, ancient. The first sleep has passed. You don't know the time, not exactly, but your body tells you it's that middle pocket of night, the waking interval, not morning, not midnight, just the in-between. You stretch your arms and yawn, careful not to knock over the jug of water placed near your bed. One sip left frozen at the top. Naturally, your joints creak. The dog groans. Somewhere, someone farts loudly. You smirk. Welcome to medieval nightlife. This strange little window between first and second sleep is one of the most overlooked chapters in the history of rest. But it was real. People didn't sleep in a single unbroken chunk like most do now. They slept in two halves, roughly 4 hours down, then 1 or 2 hours awake, then back down for another 4. It wasn't just random, it was routine. So what did people do during this time? The short answer, a bit of everything. You quietly step outside, just beyond the door, boots crunching over frost-stiffened dirt. Not everyone would brave the night at this hour, but you're careful, your cloak drawn tight, your breath visible in tiny ghosts. And the silence? It's biblical. The stars are still out, bright and sharp, like they've been polished for winter. You scan the tree line. No movement, no wolves, no curious spirits from the marsh. Just stillness. Back inside, your father is already up. He's stirring something in a pot near the fire. Hot ale, weak broth, maybe some preserved fruit boiled into a thin porridge. It's the medieval version of a midnight snack. The fire, now fully alive again, paints your father's face in warm copper tones. He doesn't speak, just nods, then gestures to the cup he's warming. You sit beside him, legs crossed, grateful for the heat. No one says it, but this is the best hour, quiet, personal, undisturbed. Across medieval Europe, this waking period was considered sacred. Monks used it to pray and recite psalms. Farmers might check the livestock, stir the embers, or, if lucky, sneak a moment of calm with their spouse. In fact, historians say that this was the ideal hour for intimacy. No surprise that birth records show a subtle bump 9 months after winter nights. You glance over at your mother and younger siblings, still deep in second sleep. Their breathing is soft, rhythmic. The dog snores. What you do in this time depends on your day's weight. Sometimes you simply think, lay there, staring at the ceiling, sorting the events of the day. You wonder
if you stacked enough firewood, if the neighbor's boy is still sick, if spring will come early. Your brain, finally unburdened by survival mode, starts whispering ideas it didn't have time for in daylight. Tonight, though, you sip the warm drink and watch the fire. This is enough. In richer households, these hours might be spent writing, sewing, or journaling. Some scholars use the time for studying religious texts, scribbling by candlelight until the wax ran low. You're not literate. Most peasants aren't, but you know how to tell stories, and that's just as important. Your father breaks the silence, asking about the thatch above your bed. You mention the drip. He nods. We'll patch it tomorrow, he mutters before falling quiet again. It's a full conversation by peasant standards. You both sit like that for a while, just you, him, the dog, and the firelight, and though you'd never say it aloud, you're grateful. This hour, this moment, feels ancient, like tapping into something older than sleep itself. And then you hear it, a knock, not a hard one, software, almost polite. You freeze. Your father rises slowly, reaching for the iron poker. Nothing lethal, but better than bare hands. You follow, heart pounding. He opens the door, just a crack. It's Thomas, your uncle's son, breath steaming in the cold, face flushed, sheepish expression. Sorry, he whispers, needed more salt. Mare's sweating again. You blink, right, the pregnant mare, due any night now. Your father hands him a cloth pouch of salt without speaking. Thomas nods, thanks, and disappears into the night like he was never there. The door shuts again. You exhale. Welcome to peasant emergencies. Salt, goats, and horses in labor. Historians still argue whether this wakeful hour was universal. Some insist it was mainly Northern Europe. Others claim it was widespread across cultures, especially before artificial lighting reprogrammed our sleep cycles. The debate's not settled, but what is clear is that in the medieval world, darkness wasn't empty, it was full. You stoke the fire again before returning to your straw bed. The warmth lingers on your skin. Your brother is now hugging the blanket like a prize pig. You sigh and slide in anyway, tucking your cloak around your feet like a burrito wrap. This second sleep, it's deeper, quieter, fewer dreams, more surrender. Your muscles go slack, your thoughts slow. Outside, the stars begin to fade. Morning's whisper grows louder.
You don't so much wake up as you return, a slow crawl upward from a heavy second sleep that clings to your bones like wet wool. The air is colder now, crisper. It always is just before dawn. You can feel it pressing against your nose, sneaking beneath the blanket, biting at your fingers where they peek out. It's the kind of cold that doesn't wait for permission. The fire's gone again, just a pale bed of ash where warmth once lived. You know better than to hope it's still usable. The second sleep tends to finish it off. You sit up, groaning quietly, joints stiff, neck sore. Your brother's elbow is lodged somewhere in your ribs, and the dog has taken over your half of the straw pile. Typical, no rooster crows yet. But the silence has changed. You can feel it. The dark is no longer deep and infinite. It's thinning just slightly, like it's beginning to retreat. You can almost hear the dawn sharpening its edge behind the trees. Your mother's already stirring. You hear the familiar rustle of cloth, the slow grunt as she pulls on layers, and the unmistakable squeak of the wooden ladle she uses to stir the morning mash. She doesn't say anything yet. She doesn't need to. Everyone knows the rhythm of morning. The ritual is old. Outside the frost is thick on the ground, crackling under your father's boots as he steps into the pre-dawn. He'll check the animals first. It's always the animals. Chickens, goats, maybe a sheep if you're lucky, or unlucky depending on how loudly it screams when startled. Either way, the barn door squeaks on command, another sound that tells you where you are in the story of your day. You slip on your tunic again, still damp in spots, then your heavier cloak, the one with the repaired tier near the shoulder, the tier you made last winter climbing the apple tree too early in the season, trying to beat the birds to the last fruit. You didn't win as you lace your boots, cold, cracked leather that pinches in one heel. You notice your sister is still asleep. Her face is turned into the blanket, her breath a soft cloud. You don't wake her, she's smaller, she'll get a few more minutes. Now, the water. You take the bucket outside, stepping carefully along the frozen path toward the communal well. It's dark, but you can see enough. Snow crunching beneath your boots, your breath puffing ahead like a scouting ghost. You pass Thomas, your cousin, who nods at you, already returning from the same errand. His face is red, his hands jammed deep into his sleeves. You grin at each other in the universal language of too early for this. The well is stiff with frost. You have to chip a bit off the rope guide before lowering the bucket. It hits the water with a satisfying splash, and you crank it back up, arms groaning. Ice crusts the edges. You wipe it off with your sleeve and head back fast as you can. The cold isn't mean, it's just efficient. Back in the house, the fire's been reborn. Your mother has coaxed it back to life with some dry kindling and the last of yesterday's peat. The smell is rich, earthy, tinged with something that might be cabbage or disappointment, hard to tell sometimes. She ladles out bowls of thin porridge, barley mostly, maybe a sliver of dried apple if she was feeling generous last night. There's no sugar, no butter, just warm grain and whatever you can imagine into it. You blow on the steam, then slurp. Breakfast isn't a mealtime so much as a beginning. It's warm, that's the priority. The others begin to stir. Your father comes back in, cheeks glowing. He's already complaining about the stubborn goat. Your sister sits up, hair like a bird's nest, blinking owlishly. Your brother grumbles and pretends to be dead for 5 more minutes before your mother throws a blanket at him. This is the real medieval morning, not a burst of sunshine and songbirds, but a slow unfreezing of limbs, a return from the world of dark dreams, a rekindling, literally, of life. You stretch again, your back cracking like firewood. Today's tasks await, and they're always the same. Haul, gather, fix, carry, scrub, repeat. The sun hasn't risen yet, but its fingers are beginning to paint the frost with color, pale gold, washed blue, sleepy gray. Historians say peasants rose with the sun, but the truth is, they rose when the house rose, when the fire rose, when the cold forced them to, and you're ready, well, ready-ish. You wipe your bowl clean with the end of a crust, toss it to the dog, and stand. Your boots feel looser now that the leather has warmed. Your shoulders square a little. The day ahead is a mountain, but one you've climbed before. Still, as the house fills with the sounds of waking life, slurping, muttering, stomping, you find yourself glancing toward the dark corner of the room where your straw bed still waits, where the night wrapped around you like a second skin, where just hours ago you slept like the rest of your ancestors have done for generations, half hoping the dawn You step out into the morning like a swimmer into cold water, slowly, wincing, already regretting it. The sky isn't bright yet, but it's no longer black. A dusty lavender hue bleeds across the clouds, as if the sun has started scribbling over the stars with a piece of old charcoal. The frost crunches underfoot louder than you remember. Everything sounds sharper in the dawn. The village is stirring too. You see a wisp of smoke curling from your neighbor's chimney. A rooster finally remembers his job and lets out a hoarse crow. A dog barks once, pauses, and barks again, like he's making sure someone noticed. The rhythm of life is starting again. Your first task? The animals. You and your brother trudge toward the lean-to at the edge of your yard. It's more shed than barn. Crooked beams, sagging thatch, and a stubborn door that always sticks just when you need it to open. You heave against it, grunting until the frost-crusted latch gives way with a snap that echoes through the still air. Inside, the warmth is faint, but it's there, clinging to the bodies of 2 goats and 1 half-blind chicken. The goats bleat at you as if you're the one who overslept. You mutter something back that you hope they can't understand and begin scooping the frozen manure into a straw-lined pit outside. This is morning, medieval style. No silence, no serenity, just cold fingers and living creatures that always need something. Feeding comes next. Hay from the stack, a handful of grain from a cloth bag hung from the rafters. You toss it out with practiced efficiency. The goats jostle each other like grumpy roommates. You check the chicken's water. It's frozen solid. Of course it is. You swap it out for the bucket you hauled earlier, watching the bird bob its head and drink as if this isn't the 3rd time it's needed saving this week. And while you're working, your body remembers the cold. Not just the surface chill, the deep cold, the kind that settles into your knuckles and your spine, that no amount of wool can completely erase. Medieval winters weren't romantic. They were punishing. Days were short, nights were longer, and warmth was a thing you had to chase, not assume. You step outside again and catch a gust of wind straight to the face. You don't flinch anymore. You're used to it. Back in the house, your mother is already clearing away the breakfast bowls. She started kneading the bread for later, coarse barley loaves that bake slowly on a hot stone near the fire. The smell is earthy and sour and reminds you of every winter morning you've ever lived. Your sister is stacking firewood. Your father is sharpening a blade. No one is idle. Idle is a luxury, and luxuries are for people with roofs that don't leak. You remember the times you visited the steward's manor up the hill. They had real floors, candles that lasted the whole night, even windows with glass. You were too young to hide your envy back then. You're better at it now. Still, there's a kind of pride in the way your family moves. Everyone knows their place. Everyone has a task. You may not be rich, but you are part of a clock that ticks reliably through the hours. You glance at the sun, still not visible, but its glow is growing behind the tree line. Time to help your father with the fence. A storm last week knocked half of it sideways. That's what happens when you build with rotting wood and stubborn hope. He hands you the mallet. You hold the splintery beam steady as he hammers it back into the frozen earth. Each blow sends a tremor up your arm and into your teeth. Your fingers go numb again. You keep working. Historians often romanticize peasant mornings as simple or pure. They rarely mention the chilblains, the rot, the aching knees, but you live the truth of it. It's
It's not just survival, it's the relentless maintenance of survival. And yet there's beauty here too. As the sun finally lifts above the horizon, gold spills across the field, frost sparkles on every surface, wood, grass, even the goats. Your breath catches a little, just for a moment. Your brother catches you staring. You gonna fall in love with the goat or help me tie this fence, he mutters. You chuckle and get back to work. There's a rhythm to all of this, not like modern time. No clocks, no alarms, just bells from the church, the arc of the sun, and the instincts honed by repetition. You know when it's time to eat by the way your stomach grumbles. You know when to work by the shadows on the ground. You know when to rest by the aching in your back. And when it's all done, when the fence stands, when the animals are fed, when your cheeks are chapped from wind and your boots soaked from snow, you return to the hearth, not for luxury, for necessity. The fire is warm again. Your mother hands you a cloth to dry your hands. Someone hands you a half loaf of bread, still steaming, and for just a second, in the heart of medieval morning, you feel rich.
The day now breathes in full. Sunlight cuts through the mist like a sword, warming the rooftops with reluctant generosity. But don't be fooled, it's still cold, the kind of cold that clings to your shadow, never quite letting go. You've worked through the worst of it, the frost on the fence, the angry goats, the endless cracking of your knuckles. Now the village starts to hum. Smoke curls lazily from a dozen chimneys, each one announcing that a home inside still lives, still cooks, still fights against the wind. You see neighbors outside now, some hauling buckets, others gathering kindling, a few just stretching their limbs like creaky trees coming out of hibernation. The communal life of a medieval village doesn't wait for formal greetings. You grunt at old Marta as she tosses kitchen scraps to her chickens. She grunts back, "That's good enough." Back in your own yard, your father has moved on to repairing the wooden plough blade. You're sent to help your mother instead. Today, that means fetching more rushes to lay on the floor. The old ones are brittle and smell faintly of urine and mold. They've done their duty. You walk toward the edge of the village, where last summer's rushes were stacked under a lean-to. There's snow crusted over them now, but they're still dry beneath. You gather a bundle, tie it with a strip of worn cloth, and sling it over your back like a medieval Santa, minus the cheer. As you return, the village dog, no one owns him but everyone feeds him, tags along beside you. You glance down at him, he glances back. There's understanding in his eyes. Neither of you signed up for this life, but here you are. The rushes are dumped onto the floor by the hearth. Your mother spreads them carefully, sweeping the old ones into a bucket for composting. This too is a ritual. In homes without tile, carpet, or even proper wooden flooring, rushes serve as medieval carpet, soaking up spills, masking odors, cushioning steps. Occasionally, aromatic herbs are mixed in: lavender, rosemary, mint. Not today, though, just plain old straw. Historians still argue whether this practice was more hygienic than filthy. Some say it was a clever method of natural floor insulation. Others say it was just a mobile nest for bugs, mice,
and mold. You've seen both arguments, and also you've seen the floor, so you have an opinion. After that, it's laundry time. Now this isn't laundry as you know it. There's no gentle rinse cycle, no warm spin with lavender detergent. This is a tub, icy water, and a wooden paddle. Soap, if you're lucky, it's a chunk of homemade lye. Soap that smells like ash and makes your hands peel for 2 days. You drag the shirts and linens outside, then haul water from the well again. This time, the bucket feels heavier. Your arms ache. You don't say anything about it, of course. You're not new here. Once the water's boiling over a fire pit, you stir the garments with a stick as thick as your arm. Steam rises in angry spirals, making your eyes water. You cough. Somewhere nearby, your sister is scraping mud from your little brother's only pair of shoes with a stick she whittled yesterday. He's chasing chickens with no shoes in the meantime. All around you, life unfolds in small, exhausting, repeated ways. There are no weekends, no holidays, feast days, maybe, but they come with their own work. Every morning flows into the afternoon with the same heavy pace. Chop, stir, patch, scrape, lift, haul. You take a break for a slice of bread. It's cold now, hard enough to make a squirrel cry. You dip it into the hot water before biting. It helps. Your father walks by with a rope coiled over his shoulder. Time to check the snare traps, he says, almost casually. You nod. If there's rabbit, it's dinner. If not, more cabbage stew. Either way, you're going. The snare lines are set near the woods, but not in them. No one ventures deep into the trees without good reason. They say the old gods still walk there. You don't believe it, mostly, but your hand still brushes the iron amulet tied to your belt as you follow the path. 3 traps, 1 sprung. You bend low and find a squirrel. Not ideal, but not nothing. Your father shrugs. We'll stretch the skin, use the tail for fishing, meet something, and you nod again, because that's what you do. On the way back, you notice a set of prints near the edge of the trail, larger than a dog, not fresh, but deep. Your father glances down, frowns, then walks on without comment. So you do too, because in a world this old, it's best not to ask questions you can't afford the answers to. By now, the sky is blue, the frost has melted into mud, your boots squelch, your hands sting, and your second wind is running out. Back at home, the stew pot is on again. It's the same stew from yesterday and the day before, just with slightly less stew and slightly more water. You sit beside the fire, the dog curling around your legs, and for the first time today, you let your shoulders drop.
You sit near the hearth, legs outstretched, hands raw from cold water and hard wood, your back gently steaming in the fire's warmth. For the first time since morning, you can feel your fingertips again. Not well, but they're there. Your sister nudges a bowl toward you. Stew again. You mutter thanks and take a sip, careful not to burn your tongue. It's hot, bland, and heavy with cabbage, and it tastes like survival. Across the room, your father rubs a nick on his hand. He got it trimming the branches off that fallen pine, another storm casualty. His hand shakes slightly, not from fear, just from the slow erosion of strength that comes from decades of frost and fire. He doesn't mention it. He just wraps a bit of cloth around it, tucks it under, and moves on. That's the rhythm. You don't talk about the aches. You just pass the bread. The village outside is quieter now. Midday work is in full swing. No gossiping, no singing, just tools clinking against wood, livestock grunting, and the occasional complaint launched into the sky. A normal winter day. You glance at the window, well, the goat hide flap that serves as one, and see a shadow move past, probably old Brant dragging his bundle of firewood home. His beard is longer than your sister's arm, and rumor has it he hasn't smiled since the king's last war. Whether from pain, politics, or just poor teeth, no one's sure. You shift on the bench and glance around the room. This is your world, your castle, a single room that holds everything. Your bed, your food, your family, your future. The walls are thick, made of stone and stubbornness, but the draft still finds you. It always does. Now comes the cleaning. Your mother begins gathering the old rushes from the corners, sweeping them into a large wicker basket. You help, using a handmade broom that looks more like a particularly unmotivated shrub tied to a stick. Still, it does the job. Dust rises in little angry clouds. You sneeze. Your sister laughs. You elbow her gently. Cleaning's not about beauty. It's about pests, fleas, lice, mice, and worse. The rushes are replaced every few weeks, but that doesn't stop the armies that live beneath them. Everyone itches here. Everyone pretends it's not that bad, and yet there's a kind of peace in this rhythm. You scrape, sweep, shake, fold. The motions are predictable, muscle memory guided by generations. The floor looks no different afterward, really, but you know, and that's what matters. After the cleaning, the family settles. The fire is stoked again. A chunk of peat, dark and earthy, is pressed onto the coals. It smolders slowly, giving off more heat than flame. The smell is strong, something between damp socks and smoked meat, but you're used to it. Your clothes will carry that scent for days. Your younger brother begins to fidget. He wants to go outside. Your mother gives him the look, the kind that stops goats in their tracks. He sighs and slumps beside the dog instead. This is the time of day when time feels strange. The work slows down, but it's not quite rest yet. It's the waiting hour, the space between have to and can't do anymore. People start to talk quietly, slowly, as if their voices are still thawing out. Someone tells a story, maybe your uncle. He always has one, usually about a time he fought off a wolf with just a shovel. The details change with each telling, and no one calls him out, because in winter a good story is worth more than a truthful one. Today, though, the story is older, deeper. He tells of a woman who lived in the forest alone, said she could call the snow, talk to birds, and heal burns with a kiss. You know it's just a tale, but still you feel the hair on your arms stand. The fire flickers when he mentions her name. Coincidence, surely. Historians still argue whether folklore like this was taken seriously or simply entertainment. Was belief in witches and wood spirits just a way to explain the unexplainable, or did people truly believe the night could think? No one agrees. But here, as the story winds down and the fire dims just slightly, you'd rather not ask. Later, the priest might come by, not to preach, not today, but to check on your mother's leg. She slipped on ice last week, and though she insists she's fine, you've seen her limp. The priest is no doctor, but he carries herbs and knows the difference between a bruise and a curse, or claims to. He knocks. You open the door. He's older than you remembered, or maybe winter just does that to people. His beard is white, eyebrows like twin storm clouds. He enters without speaking, just nods, sets his satchel down near the fire, and begins grinding something in a bowl. You watch. His fingers move like they're reading a book only he understands. Powder, water, cloth. a poultice forms. He applies it to your mother's leg while muttering something halfway between a prayer and a recipe. You're skeptical, but the smell alone clears your nose. Mint, onion, something musky and bitter. The light shifts again from pale gold to soft grey, and you know what that means. Twilight is here. Not night yet, not quite, but the village has already started to fold in on itself like a tired blanket. The soundscape changes, less chopping, fewer footsteps, more silence. A dog barks once and is quickly shushed. Even the animals sense it's time to quiet down. Inside your home, everything slows. The air gets stiller, heavier. You've patched what could be patched, eaten what could be eaten, fixed what wouldn't wait until morning. Now comes the real trick of medieval life, surviving the dark. Again, you glance at the hearth. The fire, which had been allowed to shrink through the afternoon, is now being stoked once more. Your father adds a thick log, one of the better ones, saved for evenings. Firewood is gold in winter, and the good pieces are guarded like relics. Sparks leap up like startled fireflies, and the warmth begins to roll outward again. Everyone in the house leans just slightly toward it, unconsciously, instinctively. Your sister lays out the blankets on the straw bedding. They're heavy, coarse wool stitched from worn tunics and frayed cloaks. They smell like smoke and years. She fluffs the straw beneath as best she can. It pokes through anyway. You're used to it. You scratch your leg without thinking. Then comes the lighting of the candles. Now, don't let the word candle fool you into imagining some elegant beeswax luxury glowing in a glass holder. These are tallow candles made from animal fat. They stink, they sputter, and they don't last long. But when you light them, just one or two, it feels like magic. Shadows flee, and for a moment, your one-room house becomes a stage, a circle of light surrounded by the unknowable dark. You sit with your family in that circle. No one talks too loudly, no one moves too fast. This time of day is for stories, prayers, quiet games, or simple staring. You reach for a wooden game board carved by your grandfather, some version of Nine Men's Morris. The rules are murky, but the motions are soothing. You play against your brother. He cheats. You let him. Outside, the sky fades to deep violet. The moon, waning and unsure, rises like an afterthought. Stars blink into view one by one, slow and deliberate, like candles in the cathedral of the heavens. And yet no one goes outside, not unless they must. The fear of the medieval night wasn't always rational, but it was always real. Darkness wasn't just an absence of light, it was an invitation to every fear you'd learned to hush during the day. Spirits, thieves, wolves, hunger, all of them seemed closer after sundown, more personal. Historians still argue whether the medieval fear of the night was cultural or practical. Did people believe in actual demons walking in the dark, or were they just wary of the very real dangers, bandits, predators, twisted ankles with no one to help? The answer, as always, is both. You shift closer to the fire. You're not scared, of course, not really, but you don't like the idea of going to the latrine after dark. It's 50 feet behind the house. No lights, no doors, just a wooden plank over a hole and a prayer that nothing's hiding nearby. Tonight, though, you're lucky. You went earlier. Your father begins a prayer, not a long one, just enough to remind everyone that this world doesn't end with the walls of your home. There's something larger, colder, older, and possibly watching. He finishes and murmurs something about the neighbor's daughter who's been sick all week. You all nod. The silence afterward feels like part of the prayer too. Then comes the adjustment of the fire. Again, you help bank it with ash, pressing it down carefully so it won't burn out, but also won't burn the house down. It's a fine line. Too much fuel and the flames leap up the chimney and possibly into the thatch. Too little and it dies, and if it dies, well, good luck starting a new one before dawn. You think back to that one winter 3 years ago when the fire did go out. It took your father 3 hours to get a spark going with the fire striker. Your fingers were blue by then. Your brother still has the scar on his hand from when he tried to warm it too fast afterward. That memory keeps you cautious. You add just enough fuel to keep the glow alive, then step back. Your mother yawns and wraps herself in 2 layers of cloaks. Your younger sister's already asleep, curled like a kitten under the blanket pile. The dog shifts, growls lightly in his sleep, then settles again. Even the shadows seem to relax. Now the second round of sleeping begins. You lay on your side, back to the fire, knees tucked. Your body knows this drill. The rushes crunch beneath you. A flea bites your ankle. You ignore it. For a while, you just listen to the fire cracking like distant footsteps, to your brother's slow, uneven breathing, to the wind testing the shutter, to the silence between all those sounds. The cold doesn't wake you. It's the creak, a single groan from one of the roof beams, slow and deep like a tired yawn. It pulls you up from your second sleep, blinking into darkness so thick it feels like cloth against your eyes. You're not alone in waking. Your brother shifts. The dog lifts his head and growls, just once, then silence again. You hold your breath, waiting. Another sound, softer this time, outside. A crunch of frost underfoot, or maybe just a falling branch. Maybe. You remind yourself that most of the time, night sounds are just night sounds. But still, you lie there a little too still, your ears tuned to every squeak of wind or distant rustle. Your father moves next. You hear the rustle of straw as he sits up, then the soft click of his flint box. A minute later, a coal glows faintly to life in the hearth, just enough to push the black back by a few feet. No fire yet, just enough warmth to calm the nerves. He doesn't say anything. He just sits by the hearth, keeping watch, like he always does when the wind howls a little too loud. You glance toward the window. It's still the middle of the night, maybe 2 or 3 hours till dawn. Time stretches oddly at this hour. It's slippery. You can't measure it the way you do during the day. There are no bells, no sun, just instinct and cold. This is the watch hour, that strange middle place between sleeps when medieval folk often rose and moved quietly through the house. You sit up, rubbing your eyes. You're not fully awake, but you're not asleep either, and you're not alone in that. Segmented sleep, as historians call it, wasn't just a fluke, it was a pattern. You sleep for a few hours, wake around midnight, and then sleep again until morning. In this middle gap, people did all sorts of things, whispered prayers, mended clothes, checked on animals, or just sat with their thoughts. Sometimes those thoughts were pleasant, sometimes they weren't. Tonight, your mother pulls out a small basket of mending, a shirt with a hole in the elbow, socks with more hole than sock. She doesn't need full light, just the glow of the embers and the memory in her hands. Stitch, pull, tie, repeat. She hums softly, the same tune from earlier, as if trying to lull the house back to sleep. You take the dog out quietly. The wind hits you like a slap, wet, heavy, and full of warnings. The outhouse is 50 steps away, and every one of them feels like a challenge. The snow crunches louder at night, the sky feels closer, and the trees, well, they don't look like trees, they look like watchers. You finish your business quickly and glance around. Everything looks the same, and yet you walk back faster than usual. Inside again, the warmth is thin but welcome. The door creaks shut, and you're back in the familiar cocoon of wool, smoke, and sleeping breath. You're not tired yet, not really, so you sit by the hearth with your father. He doesn't speak, you don't either, but in that silence something ancient lives. The fire flickers, the shadows dance, and for a while it's enough just to exist together in the middle of the dark. You remember hearing that this hour, this between, was considered special, liminal, a time when spirits could speak more freely, when dreams blurred with waking, and when prayers carried more weight. Historians still debate whether this belief was born of religion or simply the strangeness of human sleep patterns in cold, candlelit worlds. You're not sure it matters. Eventually, your eyes grow heavy again. Your father tosses a final log on the coals, not too big, not too small, and gently banks it again with ash. The fire sighs like an old man settling in for the night. You crawl back to the straw bedding. The dog's already there, his nose buried in his tail. Your sister murmurs in her sleep something about bread. You chuckle softly, and then, just as before, you lay back down. You shift, scratch, curl, and breathe. This second sleep is deeper, heavier, like the body knows it's safe to let go now. Outside, the wind hushes, the frost grows thicker on the ground. A star shoots across the sky, unseen. Inside, you dream of warm bread, of fields without mud, of a night that lasts just long enough to rest, but not enough to fear. And in that dream, for a moment, the cold disappears. You awaken not with a jolt, but with a slow drifting, like mist lifting off a pond. Your eyelids flutter before your body agrees to move. The second sleep is over. Dawn is near. There's no dramatic sunburst, no rooster shouting on cue. Just a subtle shift in the air, lighter, less damp. The wind outside has quieted, and from beneath your blanket of patched wool and dry straw, you can hear the sounds of return. Return to the day, return to routine, return to cold fingers, aching backs, and wood smoke in your lungs. Your father stirs first, rising like a bear from hibernation, stiff but determined. He stretches, bones popping like kindling snapping in the fire. He glances at the hearth, kneels, and nudges the banked coals with a stick. A faint glow peeks through the ash. Success. He adds a few twigs and breathes gently. The fire answers, stretching upward in orange tongues, casting shadows back across the stone walls. The rest of the house slowly follows his lead. You hear your mother sigh, your sister groans. The dog gives a loud snort and rolls over, clearly not impressed by the sunrise. You sit up and rub your eyes. Your breath floats in little white puffs in front of you. Cold is still here, of course it is, but somehow it feels less sharp in the morning. Outside, the village murmurs to life. A few early risers already haul water. Smoke curls lazily upward from a dozen chimneys. The familiar scent of damp wood and last night's stew hangs in the air like a memory you can't shake. You reach for your boots. They're stiff with frost. You pound them on the floor once, twice, then slide your feet in, wincing as the cold rushes up your legs like a bitter tide. You're used to this too. There's no breaking in. cold. It just breaks you until you stop complaining. As your mother starts a small pot of gruel over the rekindled fire, she hums again, same tune as last night, but slower now, as if the colds turned every note into something sacred. Your sister begins rolling up the blankets. The floor is swept again. The house is reset. Every movement is familiar, but none of it is easy. Your brother drags in the water bucket, sloshing a little onto the floor. Careful, your mother says without turning. He grumbles, you grin. Then, without instruction, everyone moves into their morning tasks. Like gears in a centuries-old clock, you too begin your part, checking the traps, feeding the goats, splitting kindling. You don't question it. That's not what mornings are for. And as you step outside, the chill greets you like an old frenemy, bitter, honest, unavoidable. But this time, you breathe it in. The wind carries the scent of pine and smoke. Frost crunches under your boots, and across the field you can hear old Marta arguing with her rooster again. Just another medieval morning. The snare traps yield nothing today. A bent branch, a broken loop, a tuft of fur. Your father inspects the damage and mutters, "Fox again." You nod. That sly thing's been stealing from everyone, but today you don't dwell on it. You have work to do. Back inside, breakfast is served. Gruel, thick and barely salted. You eat without complaint. It's warm, it's filling, it's enough. And then, in the hush between spoon scrapes, your father speaks. Today's market. Ah, yes, the travelling market comes twice a month, and today's the day. Now, don't imagine a bustling city square with trumpets and velvet stalls. This is more like a muddy clearing with 5 carts, 7 goats, and a woman selling pickled turnips from a sack. Still, it's a big deal. You glance at your mother. She's already tying up bundles of herbs and roots, things to trade, maybe earn a few coins, maybe barter for soap, or, if luck favors you, some real bread, the kind baked with wheat instead of barley, a dream wrapped in crust. Historians note how essential these markets were, even in the most isolated medieval communities, not just for commerce, but for contact. You'd hear news from other villages, catch whispers of wars, famines, births, sometimes even meet someone new. Once your sister heard a man from 2 villages over whistle while he worked. No one here whistles. It caused quite the stir. Your job is to carry the basket. 2, actually, 1 slung on each shoulder with a yoke. Your brother offers to help, but he's still limping from slipping on the ice yesterday. You pretend you don't notice. The walk is long, cold, and bumpy, but there's excitement in your step. The village behind you shrinks. The trees thicken. The world widens just a little. You pass other families on the path, nodding politely, sometimes exchanging gossip or weather predictions. Everyone looks tired. Everyone looks alive. You reach the market before midday, and there it is, the clatter of wooden wheels, the hiss of cooking fat, the bark of dogs, the call of traders, color, noise, smells that aren't just cabbage and wood smoke. You drink it all in. You find a trader selling dried apples. By the time you return home, your arms ache from the weight of the baskets, your toes have gone numb again, and your nose refuses to stop running. But in a strange way, you feel good, strong even. There's something about enduring the cold, the walking, the silence, and still coming back with something worth sharing. A few dried apples and a sprig of rosemary might not sound like a feast, but tonight they are victory. Inside, the fire greets you like an old friend, already crackling with gentle confidence. Your mother has the pot going again, stew of course, but she drops a few of the apple slices in. The sweet smell rises up like a gift from the gods. You can't help but smile. Everyone does. Your sister grates the last of the hard cheese into the mix. Your brother hands you the bowl of salt with a grin, as if he's just discovered treasure. These are luxuries, tiny ones, but they remind you that winter is not just about surviving, it's about enduring well. As you eat, the conversation shifts from practicalities to dreams. Someone wonders aloud what the king's court is like if they eat this well every day. Your uncle, who once travelled all the way to the nearest city, says he saw a noble's feast once, and it had birds stuffed with other birds. A duck inside a goose, inside a swan, he declares proudly. No one questions the logic or the physics. Someone else swears they once heard that in France people sleep on beds stuffed with feathers. Real feathers, not straw, not twigs, not mice with good balance. Feathers. You can barely imagine such softness. The talk goes on, and the walls seem to lean in closer, sharing in your warmth. The stew disappears quickly. Everyone sips slowly at the broth left behind. You help clean, wash the bowls in water that steams like a dragon's breath, your hands red and raw, but moving quickly. The dog licks a plate when no one's looking. You pretend not to see. Then it's time to prepare again for the dark. Everything slows. You watch your father place the last log of the day on the fire. There's not much wood left. A few splinters, maybe, enough for tomorrow. Barely. You'll need to gather more. The forest looms, of course, with its promises and its threats. Historians still argue whether people feared the forest more for its wild animals or for the stories whispered in its branches. Witches, ghosts, beasts that only appear when the moon is gone. But when you're cold, none of that matters. You'll go in anyway. You lay out the blankets again. The straw beneath crackles and you adjust the mat so it doesn't slope toward the hearth. You've rolled into the fire once, never again. Your mother braids your sister's hair with fingers as precise as embroidery needles. It's a kind of ritual, part care, part habit, part defense against tangles and lice. Braids mean order. Braids mean tomorrow. The dog has already claimed his spot at the edge of the warmest circle. He huffs once and curls up. You envy his ease. He doesn't fear the night. You do, but not like before. Now, as the candles are lit and the room grows soft with shadows, you feel ready. Not comfortable, exactly, not relaxed, but ready. You lie down, your back to the wall, this time facing inward. You can see your family breathing, slow and steady. The fire burns low but steady. The embers glow like watchful eyes. You close yours, and soon you're in that dreamy half-sleep again. But it's different tonight, because now you understand how this rhythm holds the village together. The work, the cold, the sharing, the stories, the second sleep. It's all part of a pattern that's bigger than you, that's older than you, and it works. You start to dream this time of summer, not sunshine exactly, but warmth that doesn't need fire. Days where you walk barefoot through tall grass, nights where the wind feels gentle, not cruel. You dream of honey, of warmth, of blankets made of feathers, and in your sleep you smile because you know that winter isn't forever. It never is. The night unfolds again, as it always does, slow and heavy, yet oddly familiar. You're deep into your second sleep now, body curled like a comma, mind drifting somewhere between yesterday's chores and tomorrow's dreams. The fire has dimmed to a gentle red pulse, and the chill creeps in, just enough to remind your toes what season it is. Outside, the village is wrapped in the kind of silence only deep winter can bring. No dogs barking, no late travellers, just the whisper of wind against stone walls and the soft creak of timber settling into sleep. Even the owls seem to have dozed off. It's a rare, precious stillness, fragile and absolute. You stir slightly, not fully waking, just rolling into a warmer position under the wool blanket, trying to avoid the straw sticking through your tunic. Your breath is steady, so is your sister's, your brother's, the dog's. The whole room seems to breathe together, but there's always one moment, just before dawn, when something shifts. A crow calls from a distant tree, just once. That's the cue. Your father begins to move, not with urgency, but with precision. You hear the soft scrape of him sitting up, the whisper of cloth, the careful banking of the fire, one last time. He's done this hundreds of times, maybe thousands. You don't open your eyes yet, but your mind begins to rise, like bread in the warmth of the morning. Your mother coughs, a short, dry sound. Then a soft voice, light's coming. And it is. Outside, the black is fading into charcoal. You can almost see the rim of the hills if you squint through the goat-hide flap of the window. A new day is sliding under the door, as shy and slow as a cat. You rise now. The floor is cold underfoot, always. You stretch, yawn, rub your face with a hand that still smells faintly of wood ash. The fire is alive, small, but it made it. You did too. Your brother groans from the blankets. Your sister throws her arm over her face. The dog stares at all of you with the judgment of a creature who has absolutely no responsibilities. The day has begun, and with it, the rhythm resets. Water must be fetched again, the woodpile checked, the traps inspected, the stew refreshed with whatever's left. It never ends, and that's the beauty of it. The repetition means you've survived long enough to repeat. This morning, though, something is different. You step outside and feel it. The air isn't quite as bitter. The night unfolds again, as it always does. Slow and heavy, yet oddly familiar. You are deep into your second sleep now, body curled like a comma, mind drifting somewhere between yesterday's chores and tomorrow's dreams. The fire has dimmed to a gentle red pulse, and the chill creeps in, just enough to remind your toes what season it is. Outside, the village is wrapped in the kind of silence only deep winter can bring. No dogs barking, no late travellers, just the whisper of wind against stone walls and the soft creak of timber settling into sleep. Even the owls seem to have dozed off. It's a rare, precious stillness, fragile and absolute. You stir slightly, not fully waking, just rolling into a warmer position under the wool blanket, trying to avoid the straw sticking through your tunic. Your breath is steady, so is your sister's, your brother's, the dog's. The whole room seems to breathe together, but there's always one moment, just before dawn, when something shifts. A crow calls from a distant tree, just once. That's the cue. Your father begins to move, not with urgency, but with precision. You hear the soft scrape of him sitting up, the whisper of cloth, the careful banking of the fire one last time. He's done this hundreds of times, maybe thousands. You don't open your eyes yet, but your mind begins to rise like bread in the warmth of the morning. Your mother coughs, a short, dry sound, then a soft voice. Light's coming. And it is. Outside, the black is fading into charcoal. You can almost see the rim of the hills if you squint through the goat-hide flap of the window. A new day is sliding under the door, as shy and slow as a cat. You rise now. The floor is cold underfoot, always. You stretch, yawn, rub your face with a hand that still smells faintly of wood ash. The fire is alive, small, but it made it. You did too. Your brother groans from the blankets. Your sister throws her arm over her face. The dog stares at all of you with the judgment of a creature who has absolutely no responsibilities. The day has begun, and with it the rhythm resets. Water must be fetched, again, the woodpile checked, the traps inspected, the stew refreshed with whatever's left. It never ends, and that's the beauty of it. The repetition means you've survived long enough to repeat.